Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Barbara Mayetta, and some of you remember me if you joined us for our first webinar on the Retirement Lifestyle series. In that webinar, we spoke a little bit about why to start preparing for retirement and retirement lifestyle in advance. Last webinar, we talked about that you're going to live for a long time. And that really means lots of opportunity to have more meaning and more purpose in your life, and more reason to actually try to purposely fill your time with things that are meaningful to you, because you're going to be there a long time. We briefly talked about the 4 keys to making your retirement lifestyle successful. We talked about having the right mindset, that the mindset is use what you have and what you love to make this the best time of your life. Get in touch with your passions. Most of us don't even understand what they are, but start to spend some time thinking about that so that this becomes one of the best times of your life. And pay attention to your physical health, because longevity kind of happens sometimes, but health span, meaning you're healthy through that long life you're going to live, is something you have to work at. And I would say you should be working on it already, or get started if you're not yet. And then also planning. As you think about, hey, I have the right mindset, I have some ideas for my passions and how to follow them, make sure you're putting into place some plans and some goals to achieve that. Don't just let retirement happen, but actually plan for it. Do these things, we believe you're going to have a much more successful retirement than if you just jump into retirement and start going through your bucket list. So today we're going to talk about your passions and ways to explore them, and ways to think about your life in ways to help you identify what are some of your bigger passions and how might you go about them. So I am Barbara Mayetta. I am a wealth advisor here at 12 Points. And, while we're talking about passions today, I'm going to tell you about mine. Because I believe that this period in life, when you're a pre-retiree, early retirement, I think this is the most exciting time of your life. You are more knowledgeable. You have more life experience. You have more wisdom and more confidence than you have at any other time in your life. So this is a great opportunity as you're transitioning to have a really new start in life and make it better and make it the best phase of your life. That said, I did that about 8 years ago. I spent some time thinking as I was getting to my 3rd chapter of my career. I thought, what do I need to make my career more passionate? And maybe even have a career where I don't think about, I want to retire because I'm tired of doing this or because I'm not getting the satisfaction out of it. And I changed the direction of my career. I've always been in financial services, more than 25 years now. But I've often seen that there are opportunities to help individuals. I was in corporate offices, working on major projects, but that's not the same as getting out and shaking people's hands and knowing that I'm helping people make a difference in their life. And that's what I wanted to do, and not just from the traditional financial aspect of it, but also helping people through this transition time recognize that the transition is not just about your finances, it's also about your life. And it's a great opportunity. And my passion here is to challenge people to look at their lifestyle for retirement and make the most of it, and help provide tools and methodologies and ways of thinking to help them achieve that. And so that's what this webinar series is about. And today is thinking about our passions. We're going to have more webinar series, and I'll address at the end some ideas for future ones that I'd love to get your input on. I'd just like to start with this quote from Dostoevsky. I had trouble saying his name so quickly. The mystery of human existence lies in not in just staying alive, but in finding something to live for. And nothing can be more true than that. And through most of our lives up till the point of retirement, this was kind of handed to us, right? It was handed to us. You go to school, you learn, you make good grades. You get out of high school, maybe you go on to college, maybe you go on to grad school. It's handed to you. Maybe, you go and you find a spouse and build a family, and you build a career, and all of these things are kind of handed to you of what we're supposed to be doing in life. Hopefully some of you broke out from that a little bit, but for many of us, this is kind of the paths were handed to us. Now, in this last phase of life, we call retirement, it's a clean slate. So I think it's really time to find something worth living for. So as we go through the webinar today, you're at the end of this webinar, you're not going to have identified, here's my 3 passions, and let's go find them and dig into them. But I'm going to provide you with tools and ways of thinking and things to explore. And there are some exercises that you won't get a chance to do them during this, but you can go to the website. I'll show you at the end. And there's a great article that is in there that talks about these exercises. So you can look at that article and do some of these exercises. But as we go through today, I want to ask you to, if you would, even right now, take out a piece of paper and a pencil. And occasionally I'm going to stop and say, hey, please write down 2 ideas that you had while I talked through, a slide on X topic. Just so that you begin the thinking and you don't lose the ideas for later. Just write down a couple of ideas as we talk through the presentation. And that will all be, you'll see, fodder for you to begin exploring your passions later. So what is passion? Passion is a strong feeling of enthusiasm and excitement. Obviously, I try to have enthusiasm. It's also things that motivate us. It's an area of interest, and I'm really motivated to learn more or do more in this area. I feel motivated. And if I just take those 2 points and call that passion, in reality, what those might just be are interests. And interests are good. I don't want to discourage you from having interests. But I think what takes it to the next level of being passionate is that it's something that when there's problems with it, when the going gets tough, you want to dig in and move through it. And it sustains us. The goal of this passion or the idea of this passion sustains me through those challenges and setbacks that I might have. And I think that's what elevates from an interest to a passion. So what we really want to do is find what gives us that passion. I'm enthusiastic and I'm going to stick with it because this really provides for me that deep down level of this is really important and important enough, I'm going to work for it. So real quick, I'm going to start right here and say, hey, on that piece of paper, would you take a second just to write down 1 or 2 ideas that you have of, what a passion might be for you? It doesn't have to be a passion you're actually going to go do anything on. I just want off the top of your head is something that motivates you and you'd really like to do it and you're going to stick with it even when the going gets tough. It might be something you're already working on in your life. For many pre-retirees, there we go. Here's my passion, getting my PowerPoint to work. For many pre-retirees, often they look for their passion in their work. Maybe they don't actually want to retire. They just want to stay with their current job. And if you really love your job and you're getting a deep sense of satisfaction from it, that can be really great. And it's a great way to keep yourself really healthy and mentally stimulated through retirement. And if you're enjoying it and loving it, you don't have to leave, I hope. Some people consider doing maybe the same type of thing, but maybe they can do it part-time. Maybe that requires modifying it a little bit. I like to use an example. I have a client who's a carpenter, works for a carpenter union, does a lot of work on major buildings, major developments, and still loves being a carpenter, just doesn't want to have to do it in, large projects. And maybe is feeling a little bit like, I don't necessarily, he doesn't get the same sense of accomplishment from doing it. Seriously thinking about, hey, putting out the shingle, still do my carpentry, but I'm going to do it for individuals now in their homes and do smaller projects where I still get a little bit of money part-time, can do my own scheduling, and at the same time get to see the finished project and the look of glee on his clients' faces when they see, maybe it's a new staircase banister, maybe it's a new deck, but just a different feeling that he'll get out of working that way than on the large projects he's done all his life. You could consider to use current skills in a different career. And I'm going to throw myself in there as that person who decided that, hey, I knew a lot about financial services, a lot about finances, a lot about financial planning, but I needed to do it differently. I really needed just to find a way to really enjoy it more. And I did that. I'm out now working with people and getting that daily satisfaction of helping people. And I'm still constantly exploring, looking for ways to develop talking with people about retirement lifestyle and getting them tools and ideas so that we're doing more than planning that financial transition into retirement, but also helping them in a different way, building retirement lifestyle. Some people go for a completely different type of career. And I've got a client that I just love to death. She was a successful woman executive. She's retired now in her early 70s. She moved south, not all the way to Florida though. But she always enjoyed doing some art, some painting, and some sculptures. But now she's doing sculptures and participating in art shows, and actually recently has been commissioned to make a sculpture of the bust of the mayor of her city. And how exciting can that be now? They're doing something so different, but actually developing I'll call it a minor career. She's not out trying to make the big bucks like she used to, but she's really enjoying it and getting paid. And if you're thinking about any of these 3 or 4 different approaches to it, I'd like to recommend that you take a look at this book called Unretired. And yes, it's available on Amazon. It's a really easy read with lots of examples and stories about people who continue in their own career, use their skill sets in different ways in their retirement, or actually go after a completely different career. And just through the examples, I think it'll help you if you're thinking, oh, I want to keep working, but not doing what I want to do, or doing what I want to do, but how can I do that? What changes should I consider making? Really great, really great. And it's an easy read. Lots of examples of people and great stories. While that piece of paper is sitting in front of you, put the pencil in your hand if you would, and write down 2 ideas that come to mind when you think about how you might approach your career differently, or a completely different career, or what you might do in retirement to still have purpose and meaning related to your job. And maybe you won't really do that, but just ideas for this. I'll throw out lots of people I know think about teaching, consulting, One I know has always enjoyed the guitar. Used to play in a band back in the late 70s, and now maybe is thinking about, hey, maybe doing a band thing just locally, pick up a couple of bucks here and there, but more to have fun with other musicians. So just ideas like that. Just jot them down so you have it and you can refer back to it later. Often in our late 40s, maybe to our 60s or so, some of us have a feeling that our strengths have changed as we enter the second half of our life. And I'm not talking about the physical strengths here, I'm talking about at work. How many of us, hear ourselves sometimes saying, oh, I can't keep up with all these young people. And it's not just their energy. Gosh, it seems like they can absorb this new technical information or solve these technical problems faster than I can. Um, but at the same time, they can solve this stuff, but they don't necessarily know how to apply it to this business situation. And certainly don't know how to explain it, build it into the process in ways that it can provide real value. So, but I feel lost on that part of, I don't have that skill set to compete with them from a technical perspective anymore. And unfortunately, I hear that from people and people who are, in the technical fields. But it's not surprising. Um, so there's a belief that we may have two different types of intelligence. And I think this is driving part of what I hear. Early in life, we have fluid intelligence. And this is that ability to reason, think flexibly, solve novel problems, learn that technology, and solve the problems with it. But the other thing that happens during that time as we're doing all that problem solving, learning all the technical skills, we don't really know yet how to communicate that with other people, how to apply it to the real world as well, how to be able to get other people to adapt all of our great ideas. And those are skills we refer to as crystallized intelligence, the ability to use the knowledge, vast amounts of data, your wisdom, your life experience. And it's really helping you develop skills on instructing and explaining things. And I think that's where some of us see that, people often shift from learning to consulting, from maybe from doing and out there in the corporate world to wanting to teach, because now you understand how to explain it better to people and how to provide that real world life experience, to make all of that knowledge that we have more usable and consumable now. If you think you've ever had any of those thoughts, yes, I'm going to recommend another book, which is where this concept comes from. Also, a New York Times bestseller for a very long time. A book called From Strength to Strength. And this is about finding success, happiness, and deep purpose in the second half of your life. If you choose to pick this up, I say, hey, don't be discouraged by the first chapter or two, because in the first chapter or two, the author is trying to convince you that, yeah, some of your skills aren't what they used to be, and they're starting to not be as good anymore. You're starting on the downward slope, but at the same time, you're on that upward slope. And the question becomes, how do we hop from one curve, the fluid intelligence curve, to the crystallized intelligence curve? And this book will help you explore that. I recommend this to people, especially people in their late 40s, 50s, early 60s, who are thinking about a change in their career and how to do it in a way that helps them have more satisfaction and purpose. One of my favorites. So where else do we look for passion? Where do you find passion? I'd like to think there are two ways that we recommend, and from all the research we've been doing: spending time in your own mind and spending time in the world. Spending time in your own mind, examining passions from other times in your life, thinking about activities that you love and why do you love them. Reading articles, books, websites, live podcasts. There's a ton out there. Try to spend some time there. And I have a couple books as we've been going through here. Obviously, I'm recommending, and also from time to time, I'm putting them on the retirement lifestyle workshop website that we've developed. And so you'll see more and more information shared out there as just sources for thinking about everything related to retirement lifestyle, but particularly passion to start with. And journaling. If any of you have ever tried journaling, it's a great exercise, takes a lot of discipline, but to just start to jot down, what have I been doing today? How did I feel about it? Liked this, didn't like that. Want to do more of this, less of that. And sometimes I say on the spending time in your own mind is when you take the dog for the walk, take off your headphones. I have to make myself do that to just say, hey, I'm going to spend more time with myself and thinking about what's going on in my life today and what would make it better. The other way to think about where do you find your passion is spending more time in the world. I like to suggest that people start talking about it. So next time you're having drinks with a friend or a couple of friends or maybe some coworkers, talk about, hey, what are you passionate about? What do you do when you're not at work? What do you think you'd like to do in your next phase of work? What do you love about this job? What do you hate about this job? What are you looking for differently? Talk to people. Ask them those questions, and man, you'll find people want to talk about this, but most people just won't initiate the conversations. But people love to talk about this. I know from my own experience. Try out some of the new activities, anything that you're thinking about that's, on your list of things that you are considering to be a passion. Try out a couple of them long before you get to retirement. Have those new experiences. And often what I hear people talk about when they talk about what they want to do in retirement, the word volunteering comes up a lot. Giving back. Try to get some experience with that. That'll help you explore what do you like about volunteering, what don't you like about volunteering, and so that by the time you get to retirement, you're a little more focused and ready to jump into it in a bigger way with more knowledge. And now I want to take a second and ask you to look at that piece of paper again and write down 2 people that you think you could have a good conversation with about asking them about what are their passions and how might they explore them, and who might be interested and share maybe some of the same passions that you have. So you can have a really good discussion around, hey, these are the things I'm looking at or thinking about with finding my passion or my purpose. You can use either term, they are different, but to get the conversation going, pick 2 people you might do that with and think about that the next time you're going to get together with them. Talk to them about that passion. Got those 2 names on paper? First names are good enough. No, what I want to do is throw out for you right now, finding your passion isn't a straight line. You're just going to do a couple of exercises here and bingo, you got it. For some of us, it goes all over the place, right? Down at the bottom. See the messy line? Goes up, goes down, goes forward, goes backwards. Go forward and backwards. Goes forward and backwards a few more times, right? It's not a straight line. The other thing that I've seen happen, and it's like this aha moment. People get really excited when they find it. And by the way, I found one for me. But if you identify, start just jotting down what my interests are. And sometimes if you make those lists, then you can start to see, well, how do a few of these come together? Is there a common theme? Is there a theme in a way that brings it together? And I can have an aha moment to say, wow, that would be something really cool and I could get passionate about it. And I'm going to tell you, I had an aha moment because if you haven't figured this out yet, I've been reading these books now for several years, trying to figure out which are the best, what are the best ideas, how do you package it up in a way to share it with people? And I've been doing this. And a couple of the things I realized about myself is that I love to build teams and I love to help teams move towards common goals. It's just something that's like part of my nature over the years. So when I jotted down what are things that I did that were good accomplishments or I was really excited about, what I saw was this commonality of teams and playing a role of helping to lead or move the team forward towards common goals. And then I also realized I love to exercise, and exercise is extremely important part of my life because I am going to live into my late 90s. My kids here are even planning on 100. So I need to, that's part of my life. And I am enjoying being on the rowing machine, right? An erg, a rowing machine, whatever you want to call it. I have two daughters who row, so I'm very exposed to this. And I'm also very competitive by nature. In a good way, I hope. As I thought more and more about this plus many other things, there was an aha moment, probably one day when I was at my daughter's boat club and met some women who were, into their 50s and learning to row for the first time. They were competing in rowing for the first time, and they were talking about the things that their team does together to promote their rowing club, to get to help build the club, to help recruit people. And I just said, wow, this is like bringing together stuff that I really enjoy in different ideas of things that I enjoy together to one. And now I'm exploring, as soon as I can figure out how to make the time to do it, joining the boat club and getting very involved with it and being out there on the water and exercising. And oh, by the way, did I mention that I love being on water? Always love water. So just an aha moment by way of making the lists. Today, maybe for the next week, what would be really great is if you just keep jotting down ideas that you have, whether you're driving home, whether you're, in the shower, get out, make the notes, but jot down the things that are interesting to you and things that motivate you. And at some point, then come back and look at the list and see how it comes together. So, might not be a straight line, probably isn't a straight line. Jot down your ideas, find out how it all comes together to get to something that motivates you. So I'm not going to leave you now. We're now going to talk a little bit about sharing a couple of exercises that you can do to start getting your creative and passion juices going. As I think I mentioned before, at the end, I'm going to give you the URL for our retirement lifestyle website, which has an article at the bottom of that website to help you explore your passion and has some of these exercises built right into the article. But finding your passions really does require exploring who you are. Exploring what your strengths are. Chances are good, things that are our strength, you enjoy. Why do you enjoy it? Because you're good at it. And so there's a lot to be said for looking at the things that are your strengths, because that might just be the things that you really enjoy. We also ask that you enjoy your past, because there might be plenty of things in your past that you used to do that at some point you lost having the time for doing and haven't gotten back to. But quite possibly it's because your career, your family, other things came in that were more important at the time. They're not here anymore. Explore the past. And then take a look going forward. What do you think you want to do? And I say, as you're doing this exploring, always keep circling it back around to, hey, have I learned anything about myself that I should add on the thinking going forward? What do I want to do? The first going forward exercise, going to be a little bit like what you've seen before, and then a lot not like it. I want you to start with an accomplishments bucket list. And this is not your accomplishments from the past, but your accomplishments. What do you want to accomplish going forward? And it's not like the every other bucket list. Oh, create the bucket list. So these are the things you want to do. Because that bucket list, these are the 100 things to do before I die, can often become just exactly that, which are these are things I think I'm going to enjoy, and I want to go I want to go travel somewhere else. I want to build a boat. I want to make my garden magnificent, those sorts of things. And those would fall under the category of playing, right? There's a category here for playing. So put those things in there, in that category. And then a lot of the other things that might have fallen on that type of bucket list are things like, I want to dance at my grandson's wedding, right? That's saying, hey, I want to keep myself healthy enough. I want to be able to travel. I want to have a great relationship with my grandson, so he'll invite me. So those are, that would be an accomplishment to be able to do that. Maybe I want to take my kids to get Disney, right? Those are all parts of building those relationships so you're in a position to be able to do those things when it's appropriate. But I also want just to share with you a couple of ideas that I've heard from clients as we talk through their findings on filling out this type of chart. One that I loved, and I take it very deeply here as a way of thinking about relationships. One person said their goal was, their accomplishment they really want is to feel cherished again. They'd obviously hit a point in life where they're just not feeling that right now. But that for their relationships, for what they want out of relationships in life, this was very important to them. It's deep, but I throw it out as an example so that you think deep also. Another is that I also heard right along these same lines was building my relationship with myself. And you can take that any way you want to, for I think everybody has their own different relationship with themselves and maybe want to change. Some people want to change that. Being more honest with yourself. Responding more to your own feelings. Those are the sorts of things that come to mind. And then there are other new columns here that maybe you don't think about when you think about making a list of accomplishments. What do you want to do? Let's start with learning, right? Maybe there are, somebody said, hey, my kids speak French. I'd love to learn. My kids and their kids now, grandkids, they speak French. I don't really love to do that. That's continuing learning, right? Continuing learning is going to be really important for those of us who are planning on living to 100 because that stimulates our brain, and we need to be able to keep our brain, that helps keep our brain healthy. Maybe it's a musical instrument. Maybe you used to play one. You want to play one again. Maybe I can take that musical instrument right over to community and say, hey, I really want to join a band. What do I want to do in my community? And for a lot of people, this is going to be when you start thinking about volunteering. And at this point, maybe you don't know what volunteer activities specifically, but if you start thinking about in volunteering, do you have specific causes you want to help? Or think about it as, is this going to be time? Is this going to be money? How about, are there specific skills you have that you want to figure out how to use them in volunteering? But to begin to jot that down so you know the areas you want to explore and start to see, once again, all of the different ideas and how could they come together. And spiritually, many of us have not had the time to be thinking about that. This is on here so that if you are spiritually inclined, start thinking about it, because this is a time when you get into retirement that maybe you'll have more time to participate in those spirituality activities again, or mindsets, everything that might make you a little bit happier. On that note, I'm going to take a brief stop right here and say, pick up the pencil again. Are there two ideas, just two, that came to mind in thinking about learning, playing, community, relationships, and spirituality. Just jot them down so that you have those notes for after we're done. Exploring. Yep, gotta go to the next page first. Exploring you through your past. I think I mentioned this a little bit before, but just take time to think about your activities, and I want to throw in the word accomplishments here also, that brought you joy at different times in your life. What were you doing as a child? Some of you might be asking, oh, what I did as a child, I don't know why I'm exploring that, because I'm going to be in my, uh, older adult life. Why is childhood important? I have a story of a person who was son was in his high school years, started shooting archery with a club. The person was driving their son to the club a couple of times a week in the evenings and weekends, and then found out that, oh, by the way, the club does more than just teenagers. It also has activities for teaches adults. Not only teaches adults, also has competitions. And oh, by the way, there's a whole community of adults who are competitive archers. And suddenly found, wow, something I really enjoyed doing as a kid. Now I'm taking it to a whole new level and doing it as, in that case, a retired adult. What could be better? Combining this. So thinking about what you did and whether there are actually opportunities to do some of these things when you're older. One excellent analysis that I had a client talk about was how much they loved playing in the sandbox. And I was like, okay, well, don't know how you're going to go do that as an adult, but except keep those knees good so you can get up and down. But explore, why did you enjoy building in that sandbox? What is it about that? Is this the building things? Maybe you really enjoyed building things. Maybe it was the cars and the trucks and all of the things that moved around on all the roads you made. Maybe it was just creativity and realizing that, you really want to be this creative person, and that the sandbox gave you the opportunity to play in a very creative way. Maybe as a young adult, it was clubs. Maybe it was a job. What are the things that you found that you really enjoyed in your past? Same thing with middle age. Most of you are right around there right now. Probably easy for you to figure this out a little more. But right now, while you're thinking about it, and we just talked a little bit about your childhood, pick up that pencil and just write down 2 things from a childhood that came to mind. First things that came to mind. Might never want to do anything with it, but first things that came to mind as to what you loved about your childhood that you loved doing. And after you do these sorts of exercises, think about, hey, what will I do differently after I have this information? What will I explore further? And hey, can each of you sometime this evening or sometime this weekend just take 15 minutes and expand upon the thoughts that you've written down, or the ideas, and put more ideas down on paper? Once again, having these lists to look at are going to be really, really helpful. So I do have one additional exercise you're going to get to. So to help you guide your passions, or maybe put a little why behind developing some of your passions, just want to throw in the thought of legacy. Real quick, I want you to think about, jot down on paper, if you will, 10 seconds. What does legacy mean to you? For a lot of people, they start with, oh, that's what I'm going to leave my kids monetarily. Sometimes it's, what are the family rituals that, are going to get passed down, that my children are going to learn or going to enjoy and going to do for decades or generations to come with their kids. Sometimes it's really important lessons in life. Sometimes it's ways of thinking um, that it's really, really great. I could just do real briefly here. When my child was 3 years old and she wanted a piece of candy out of a bag that was up in the closet, I told her she could have two. I got that in the bag. I took one out and I gave it to her. And then I went to get the second one out. And immediately my 3-year-old said to me, Mom, you should have gotten two the first time you put your hand in the bag. That's more efficient. And I thought to myself, oh my God, that's my child. Because I studied industrial engineering, always been kind of an efficiency expert. So just to hear my 3-year-old talk about something that was more efficient and I should do it differently, I didn't even get mad at her. I was just so, wow, way of thinking, right? Legacy. So when you leave a legacy, I just want to introduce the concept of two types of legacy. There's the big L. Hey, this is when I die. What am I leaving monetarily? What am I leaving in um, in things that the family did together that will go on for generations? This is the, hey, when I leave a job, what are the nice things people said about me as I was leaving? But let's also talk about um, the little L. You're leaving a legacy every day, every time you leave a room, every time you leave a building, when you go to the store. All of your actions and decisions and behavior are leaving a legacy. You might not know what they are. They might not ever come back to impact your life, but they will in some way, right? Think about, by being in that room today, did I change anything? Was I useful? Did I help? Right? And sometimes this legacy you're leaving are as little as I gave someone a smile that made them smile back, right? Some driver in the car next to me does something really obnoxious, and instead of blaring at the horn at them, which would have just left them upset and made it worse, I just let them go in and I gave them a little smile and mumbled to myself, have a good day. Um, so, and maybe it's giving somebody, a dime for something they need, or an extra tip, or a tip. I guess everybody's asking for tips these days. But, or sharing some wisdom with somebody in a way that will impact their lives. What are all the little things you do? Because those little things add up to who you are. So many of you have seen this exercise before, but it's the create your eulogy, and something that we all should do occasionally. A eulogy is not an obituary. An obituary is a resume, right? You were married, you had these 3 kids, you went to the school, you were, CFO of your company for, 2 decades, all those sorts of what did you do? Here's my resume. But this is really about who you were. That here's on the right hand side there, you were a dreamer, you were a leader, you had followers. When you entered a room, it brightened it up. People looked to you for guidance, for wisdom. What is it that you think is important to you that you would want to be words mentioned in a eulogy given about you? Maybe by one of your children, or maybe by your best friend, or maybe by both. How do you want different people in your life to have remembered you, who you are? Really great idea. Write down some words, prioritize, and then think about, hey, what am I doing that, is making people believe this about me today? And is there anything that I would want to do differently? All right, that is the last of the exercises, but not the last of the books. This is the last of the books now. As we talked about legacy, great book on this topic. Where I got the little L and big L from is a book called Breadcrumb Legacy. And lots of great examples, lots of great questions, things to think about to help you think about your legacy. And once again, a very easy read. Very seldom do I recommend difficult reads, but if I do, I'll let you know. And then a book that many of you may have heard of in the past, The Alchemist. It was probably on some high school or college reading lists. Um, but it was an international, actually still is an international bestseller. Um, this is really a story about, it's following the journey of a shepherd as he's searching for his treasure. And it teaches this journey teaches us about wisdom of listening to our hearts and following our dreams. Short book, really easy read, and it's just a different way, not being as prescriptive as, say, the other three books that introduce a concept and give some examples and talks about how to get there. This is just a story, but the story, if you're thinking and internalizing it, will get you thinking about your own journey and how to make decisions on your own journey. So I highly recommend both of these books and the other two that I mentioned before, just so that I'm perfectly clear. I think that when coming up to thinking about passion, it's helpful to be absorbing new information that asks you questions. So to end up today, let's talk about how to contact us. I mentioned before, we have a new landing page, 12points.com, retirement-lifestyle. And it is focused on exactly that, helping people think about what they are doing in retirement. Webinars like this one are advertised there, and you can sign up right from there. The next webinar is not yet posted, will be probably in about a week. I also post articles out there, and as I mentioned, there's an article that summarizes today's webinar, and also a book of the month. This month's book is The Unretired, but there'll be other books as we go on. And as we get past talking about passion, there'll be books related to other topics that we get to. But speaking of other topics, it would be really, really great if you guys would go down and in the chat or in the questions section, I don't care which you use, give me your thoughts on helping me prioritize some topics for webinars for later this year. One topic that I'd like to develop out and get some guest speakers in is on volunteering. One is on health span. So how do we keep ourselves healthy for that 100 years that we're going to, for the last 30 years of that 100 years we're going to be living? And maybe also on financial preparedness. What do we need to do to actually transition a little bit for our finances? Hey, we've done our financial planning. We know we have enough money to retire, but what are the other things I ought to be thinking about? How do I make withdrawals? How do I do that efficiently? Should I be looking at long-term care insurance? Oh, what about Medicare? What about supplemental? What are other topics that I can be looking at? What happens if the market crashes? How do I invest to protect myself a little bit from, if there's a down market, right, as I go into retirement? So different topics like that might be of interest. So love to hear, and maybe you have other topics that you're thinking of. These are the three I'm playing with right now to be coming up later this year, but would love to hear your priority on this and other topics that you might have. One of them for me also is social interaction. We've discovered is so important to happiness and longevity. And so how in retirement do we develop our social networks and deepen our friendships? Because, most of us haven't made friends since every time we meet new friends, every time we start a new job or when our kids were in school. But how do we do that as adults? How do we keep it flowing to, keep ourselves socially active, especially as maybe our friends move away or we move, maybe to be closer to our kids or in a warmer climate. So that's all I have for today. Would really like to get your input on this if you would share. And we are basically out of time. And I will try to, if you guys have put some questions in there, I'll see about trying to get back to you individually. And really appreciate you being here today. Thank you very much.